Today we're in Hawaii, on the island of Molokai. We're making a very short flight on the island, from Kalaupapa to the towered Molokai Airport. It's only an 8-mile direct flight, but we've got rain and marginal conditions today, so we'll be flying IFR. This is a chance for us to shoot both a departure and approach procedure, which will be linked by a single VOR. Let's have a look at the obstacle departure procedure, and for an added twist, let's use the Jeppesen plates to get a feel for how those work. We're going to be using runway 23. The takeoff minimums, which we should always try to adhere to even if we're Part 91, are standard, in other words 1 statute mile, with a minimum climb of 400 feet per nautical mile. We only need to hold that climb gradient until 430 feet, then we can climb at 200 feet per nautical mile. The Jeppesen plate tells us that at a ground speed of 75 knots, we can climb at 500 feet per minute to make this requirement. On departure, we're going to make a climbing right turn, which will start at 400 feet above the departure end of the runway to a heading at 282 degrees, climbing up to 4,000. From that heading, we're going to intercept the 010 radial inbound to the Molokai VOR, which is on 116.1. We're going to climb in the hold up to our MEA, but our top altitude is going to be 4,000 because, as we'll see on the approach we're going to shoot, the VOR into Molokai Airport will be doing a procedure turn out from the same VOR at or above 2,900 feet. Given that this is such a short flight, it's probably best to brief everything prior to departure, but let's fly it and just see what it looks like. We'll be shooting this down to minimums, then in the next video we'll be doing the missed approach and holding procedure. We have the number 1 VOR tuned to Molokai with the OBS set to 190, because that's the course we'll be flying inbound along the 010 radial. We depart to IMC, making sure to maintain at least 500 feet per minute in the climb, and at 400 feet we make that right turn to 282. This is when we would check in with ATC Honolulu Center and let them know that we're on the departure procedure. We're not tracking the VOR yet, of course, because we're still just holding this heading, waiting for the needle to come alive. The intercept is a rather steep one, turning from 282 to 190, about a 90-degree turn. So when the needle does start to come alive, it's best to make our turn but give ourselves a shallower 30-degree offset for the intercept. Once the needle centers, we'll turn fully inbound. We could be cleared for the approach as early as here now, told to cross the VOR at 4,000 or maybe lower. Once we're past the VOR, we'll turn outbound to 254. We can also twist the OBS to 254. Now, some people might prefer to twist it to 074, which is the reciprocal and is the inbound course for the approach. We'll need to do this once we're established inbound anyway, so you could be one step ahead and just do it now. It's just that to fly outbound when you have the inbound course dialed in, you'll need to remember that the needle will be reverse sensing and act accordingly. Here, we'll keep it simple and dial in the outbound. We can also descend to our procedure turn altitude, 2,900. We'll start the turn by going right to 299. We'll start timing 1 minute outbound. It's here that we'll want to have the inbound course of 074 dialed into the receiver. And when the minute's up, we turn to 119. We'll hold this heading until intercepting inbound. Once established, we can descend to 2,800, which is where we'll stay until the final approach fix, which is the VOR. Arriving at that point, we set up for the approach and will likely get handed off to Tower here, who will clear us to land on runway 23. We'll be entering a left downwind from the approach. We could descend to 1,940. We can't go down to the lower minimum of 1,400 because without DME, we have no way of identifying the woo ball fix. Once we gain sight of the runway, we can commence the circle by entering the left downwind. Now, in the next video, we'll have lost sight of the runway in the circle and need to execute the missed. But for now, we've gotten a look at a very quick, but very action-packed little IFR flight in rainy Hawaii. See you next time for part 2.